Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The tension in Los Angeles feels heavier than usual, as if every conversation carries the weight of an unseen storm ready to break. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, alliances are forming in the shadows, and emotions are being pushed to their limits in ways that no one can fully control. Recently, Liam Spencer and Bill Spencer found themselves standing on the same side, united by a shared mission to influence Hope Logan Spencer and Katie Logan Spencer. Liam is convinced that Hope is no longer truly happy at Forrester Creations, and he pushes the idea that she deserves a clean break, a fresh beginning at Logan where she might finally rediscover herself. Yet behind this confident belief lies an emotional undercurrent of concern, because Hope isn't blind to what such a decision could ignite. Hope, however, feels the pressure tightening around her heart. She understands what stepping away from Forrester would mean, not just for her career, but for the fragile balance of relationships surrounding her family. The fear of her mother, Brooke Logan Forrester's reaction, looms over her like a storm cloud that refuses to move on. At the same time, Katie finds herself caught in a similar emotional conflict, already anticipating Brooke's fury if this plan moves forward. Bill Spencer, ever strategic and commanding in presence, would love nothing more than to see Hope join forces with Katie's fashion venture. To him, it feels like a perfect alignment of talent and legacy, a powerful new chapter waiting to unfold. But even Bill, with all his influence and determination, recognizes a hard truth. This is not a decision that can be forced, only chosen. That realization settles heavily in the April 30 episode, where Bill finally admits that the decision must belong entirely to Katie and Hope. In that moment, the story shifts from persuasion to possibility, and the women begin to truly imagine what life would look like if they crossed that invisible line into a new fashion alliance. The thought is both exciting and terrifying, as it opens doors to opportunity while simultaneously threatening to fracture family ties that have taken years to build. Katie, caught in that emotional crossroads, voices her deepest fear in a chillingly quiet moment. "Brooke would kill me." As she speaks those words, eerie music drifts through the scene, wrapping around her like a warning the audience cannot ignore. The atmosphere suddenly feels heavier, as if the story itself is hinting that this is more than just family drama. It is the beginning of something far more dangerous and unpredictable. That single line lingers in the air, almost like a foreshadowing of something inevitable. Not a literal act of violence, of course, but something emotionally devastating that could ripple through the Logan family with lasting consequences. The growing hostility between Brooke and Katie is already fragile, but placing Hope at the center of their conflict threatens to push everything past the breaking point. Brooke's reaction is expected to be explosive, her anger likely directed at Katie with full force, blaming her for influencing Hope's path. In turn, Katie's emotional resilience is pushed to its limits, as every confrontation chips away at her sense of stability. The more this feud escalates, the more it feels like Katie's heart, both figuratively and literally, becomes part of the risk. There is an unsettling possibility that this emotional warfare could spiral into something physically dangerous. Katie, already vulnerable under constant stress, might find herself overwhelmed during another heated confrontation with Brooke. One moment of anger, one sharp exchange too close to an unstable setting, could lead to a tragic accident. Perhaps a fall or a sudden medical emergency triggered by emotional strain. It would not be the first time in this world that intense conflict has led to unexpected physical danger, echoing past incidents where heated arguments turned into life-altering moments. The memory of past accidents in this universe lingers quietly in the background, reminding viewers how quickly emotional chaos can turn into real-world consequences. And yet, through all this rising tension, there is still a deeper narrative possibility forming beneath the surface. Brooke is not meant to become a literal threat to Katie's life, but her emotional intensity could very well become the catalyst for a serious health crisis. Katie might eventually reach a breaking point, where her body can no longer withstand the emotional strain. leading to a near-death experience that forces everyone to stop and reassess what truly matters. In that fragile moment, the Logan family could be confronted with a painful truth: that their battles, their pride, and their emotional wars are not worth the cost of losing someone they love. It could serve as a dramatic wake-up call, a turning point where old grievances are forced to step aside in the face of something far more important. As the storyline continues to unfold, the sense of foreboding only grows stronger. The Bold and the Beautiful teases that troubling developments may be on the horizon for Katie, and the emotional stakes surrounding her feel higher than ever before. What begins as a professional decision about fashion and alliances slowly transforms into something much deeper, an emotional battleground where love, loyalty, and family history collide. And as viewers watch these tensions build, one thing becomes increasingly clear: the consequences of these choices may reach far beyond what anyone in the Logan family is prepared to face. As the tension continues to simmer beneath the surface, the emotional divide within the Logan family begins to feel less like a disagreement and more like a slow-burning fracture that could split everything apart. Katie stands at the center of it all, quietly absorbing the pressure from both sides while trying to hold on to whatever stability she has left. Every conversation about Hope's potential move to Logan feels less like a business decision and more like a trigger waiting to detonate years of unresolved family emotions. Brooke's protective instincts toward Hope only intensify the situation, making every suggestion from Katie feel like a personal betrayal rather than a professional opportunity. And in this fragile emotional climate, even the smallest disagreement carries the weight of something far more destructive waiting just beneath the surface. The world around them no longer feels balanced. It feels like it is inching closer to collapse with every passing moment. Meanwhile, Bill and Liam continue to push forward with their vision, convinced that change is not only necessary but inevitable. Their belief in this new direction for Hope adds another layer of pressure to an already volatile situation, as though they are trying to reshape a reality that refuses to bend easily. But even their confidence cannot erase the emotional consequences unfolding within the Logan family, where loyalty and love are becoming increasingly tangled with resentment and fear. Hope herself remains caught in the middle, torn between the possibility of a fresh start and the overwhelming weight of what she might be leaving behind. The idea of freedom at Logan feels promising, yet it comes with an invisible cost, one that could permanently alter her relationship with her mother and aunt. And as these choices begin to solidify, the sense of inevitability grows stronger, as if the story is quietly steering everyone toward a moment that cannot be undone. What makes the situation even more intense is the unspoken awareness that Katie is no longer just emotionally involved. She is physically vulnerable in a way that cannot be ignored. The stress of constant confrontation, particularly with Brooke, begins to feel like it is slowly eroding her strength from within. Each argument carries more weight than the last, and every raised voice or sharp accusation adds to a growing internal strain that Katie can no longer fully hide. The fear hinted at earlier now feels like a shadow stretching across every interaction, suggesting that something far more serious could emerge if this conflict continues unchecked. Whether it manifests as a sudden medical emergency or a dramatic accident born from emotional chaos, the danger surrounding Katie feels increasingly real. And in that uncertainty, the entire Logan family unknowingly inches closer to a moment that could change everything. Not just their relationships, but the course of their lives moving forward. The atmosphere within the Logan circle grows increasingly suffocating, as if every unresolved emotion is pressing in from all sides at once. Katie tries to maintain her composure, but the weight of expectation from both family and circumstance makes even simple conversations feel loaded with danger. Brooke's looming presence in this unfolding conflict becomes almost symbolic. She is not physically everywhere, yet her influence seems to echo through every decision Katie and Hope consider. That invisible pressure turns ordinary discussions into emotional battlegrounds, where even a pause or hesitation can be interpreted as betrayal. Hope, sensing the rising tension, begins to realize that no matter what she chooses, someone she loves will inevitably feel hurt by it. And that realization transforms her decision from a hopeful opportunity into a deeply emotional burden she can no longer escape. As these emotional fractures deepen, Katie finds herself increasingly isolated within her own thoughts, caught between loyalty and self-preservation. The fear she voiced earlier, half warning, half instinct, no longer feels like an exaggeration but something closer to intuition. Every confrontation with Brooke drains her further, leaving behind a quiet exhaustion that lingers long after the argument's end. It is not just the words being exchanged anymore, but the emotional intensity behind them that threatens to tip everything into chaos. Even Bill, despite his confidence and ambition, begins to recognize the fragile state of the situation, though his determination still pushes him forward rather than pulling him back. Liam, too, remains convinced that this shift is necessary, but the cost of that conviction is becoming harder to ignore as the emotional stakes rise around them. And beneath it all, an uneasy sense of inevitability continues to grow, as though the story is moving toward a breaking point that cannot be delayed. Katie's health, already quietly strained by stress and emotional turbulence, feels like a thread pulled too tightly for too long. One more confrontation, one more explosive exchange with Brooke, might be enough to push her beyond what her body and heart can withstand. Whether it becomes a sudden collapse, a medical emergency, or a near-tragic accident born from heightened emotions, the warning signs are becoming impossible to ignore. The Logan family, so deeply entangled in love and rivalry, remains unaware that their conflict is no longer just emotional. It is edging dangerously close to something that could permanently change their lives forever. The sense of tension now hangs over every interaction like an unspoken warning, as if the Logan family is walking closer and closer to an invisible edge without realizing how steep the fall could be. Katie continues to carry herself with quiet restraint, but beneath that calm surface, the strain is building in ways she can no longer fully control. Each time Brooke's name enters the conversation, the emotional atmosphere shifts instantly, turning even neutral discussions into something sharp and unstable. Hope can feel it too. The way every choice she considers is slowly becoming less about ambition and more about emotional survival within her own family. What once seemed like a promising opportunity at Logan now feels like a spark capable of igniting years of buried resentment and unresolved tension. Brooke, driven by her fierce protective instincts, becomes more emotionally reactive as the situation develops, and her presence looms even when she is not physically in the room. Her connection to Hope makes every suggestion from Katie feel personal, almost like an intrusion into something deeply sacred and unbreakable. That emotional intensity spreads outward, affecting everyone involved, until even Bill and Liam begin to sense that their carefully constructed vision is colliding with something far more volatile than expected. Yet neither of them fully steps back, as ambition and belief in the new direction continue to push them forward. This creates a dangerous imbalance, where determination keeps moving the situation ahead, but emotional stability is quietly eroding behind it. At the heart of it all, Katie stands in a position that feels increasingly fragile, as though she is balancing on a surface that could crack at any moment. The stress of constant conflict, especially with Brooke, begins to manifest not just emotionally but physically, leaving her more vulnerable than anyone around her realizes. Every heated exchange drains her a little more, and the weight of being caught between family loyalty and emotional self-protection grows heavier with each passing moment. The earlier warning, "Brooke would kill me," now feels less like dramatic fear and more like a symbolic truth about how destructive this ongoing feud has become. Because while no literal harm is intended, the emotional intensity surrounding Katie is reaching a point where her health and stability could be placed in genuine danger. And as this tension continues to escalate, the storyline edges closer to a breaking point that feels unavoidable. Whether it arrives as a sudden collapse, a medical emergency triggered by overwhelming stress, or a tragic accident born from a heated confrontation, the risk surrounding Katie becomes impossible to dismiss. The Logan family's ongoing battle, fueled by love, pride, and long-standing emotional history, is no longer just about fashion or alliances. It has become something far more personal and far more dangerous. Every unresolved argument, every emotional outburst, and every decision made in anger brings them one step closer to a moment that could change everything forever. The emotional pressure continues to build until it feels as though the entire Logan family is trapped inside a tightening spiral with no clear way out. Katie, already stretched thin by constant emotional strain, begins to move through each day with a quiet heaviness that those closest to her can sense but not fully understand. Even in calmer moments, there is an underlying tension in her expression, as if she is always bracing herself for the next confrontation. Brooke's intensity remains the central force driving much of this emotional turbulence, and every new disagreement between them feels sharper than the last, cutting deeper into an already fragile connection. Hope watches this unfolding dynamic with growing unease, realizing that what began as a professional discussion has now evolved into something far more personal and potentially damaging for everyone involved. The idea of Hope joining forces with Katie's fashion venture no longer feels like a simple opportunity. It feels like a catalyst capable of reshaping relationships that have defined their lives for years. Bill and Liam remain steadfast in their belief that this move represents progress, a chance to redefine boundaries and open new doors for the future. Yet their confidence begins to clash with the emotional reality taking shape around them, where family loyalty and unresolved history refuse to bend easily to ambition. The more they push for clarity and action, the more unstable the emotional environment becomes, as if every step forward pulls them deeper into a situation that is becoming harder to control. And within this growing imbalance, Katie remains the emotional center of gravity, absorbing the fallout from both sides while trying to hold herself together. As the conflict intensifies, subtle signs of Katie's vulnerability become more noticeable, even if no one fully acknowledges what they mean yet. The stress weighing on her begins to feel cumulative, like an invisible burden that grows heavier with each passing argument. There is a lingering sense that one more emotional blow could push her past her limit, turning tension into crisis in an instant. Whether through a sudden health emergency or a dramatic accident born from an explosive confrontation, the danger surrounding her feels increasingly present in every scene. The earlier ominous warning is no longer just dialogue. It has become a reflection of how fragile the emotional landscape truly is. And as the Logan family continues to clash, what once felt like a battle over business and direction transforms into something far more unsettling. The lines between personal loyalty, emotional responsibility, and destructive pride begin to blur, leaving everyone involved trapped in a cycle that grows more volatile with each exchange. Brooke and Katie's strained relationship becomes the emotional fault line, and every new argument risks widening that fracture beyond repair. In this atmosphere, even moments of silence feel charged, as if they are only the calm before an inevitable emotional storm. The story now moves steadily toward a breaking point where consequences can no longer be avoided, and where one irreversible moment could redefine everything for the Logan family forever. The tension now feels less like a passing storm and more like a permanent shift in the atmosphere, as though the Logan family is living inside a fragile emotional structure that could collapse at any moment. Katie continues to carry the burden of every unresolved conflict, and the weight of it begins to show in subtle but unmistakable ways. Her composure, once steady and reassuring, now carries a quiet fragility that hints at just how much strain she is enduring beneath the surface. Every encounter with Brooke adds another layer of emotional pressure, and even brief interactions feel charged with unspoken history and unresolved pain. Hope, standing in the middle of this widening divide, begins to understand that her choices are no longer just about career direction. They are about the emotional stability of her entire family. Brooke's protective instincts, while rooted in love, become increasingly intense as the situation escalates, making every disagreement feel deeply personal. What might have once been resolved with conversation now spirals into emotional confrontation, where past grievances resurface with renewed force. Katie, caught in the center of this emotional storm, struggles to maintain her balance as each exchange chips away at her sense of control. The earlier sense of warning grows stronger, no longer just a passing concern, but a persistent shadow following her through every scene. Even when the arguments end, the emotional aftershock lingers, leaving her drained and vulnerable in ways she cannot easily hide. Meanwhile, Bill and Liam remain committed to their vision, believing that change is necessary despite the growing emotional cost. Their determination pushes the storyline forward, but it also deepens the divide between intention and consequence. Hope, sensing the weight of everything unfolding around her, becomes more hesitant, aware that every step forward risks triggering another emotional fracture within her family. The idea of transformation at Logan now carries a dual meaning, one of opportunity and one of potential destruction. And as these opposing forces collide, the emotional stakes continue to rise, tightening around Katie in particular as the most vulnerable point in the entire situation. At this stage, the sense of danger surrounding Katie feels almost unavoidable, as if the emotional pressure has reached a critical threshold. Whether it manifests as a sudden collapse, a severe medical emergency, or a tragic accident during a heated confrontation, the possibility of something irreversible looms closer with each passing moment. The Logan family's ongoing conflict, fueled by pride, loyalty, and deeply rooted emotional history, has evolved into something far more serious than anyone intended. What began as disagreement has transformed into a situation where emotional strain itself becomes a threat. And as the story moves forward, it becomes increasingly clear that a single breaking point may be all it takes to change everything forever.